Hello. I wanted to take a minute to talk about the first episode of She-Hulk. I knew that She-Hulk was coming out, and I was going to try and just take a look at it. And I thought for sure that, well, I kind of forgot that Disney does the one episode thing, because honestly, I kind of thought the whole show was out already, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to watch the whole show. But it's a lot easier to watch a show when they just release one episode, and then you can talk about the first episode, and you can, kind of bounce ideas around with other people who've already seen the first episode, and then if you want to come back next week, you can. That's just a way better way of releasing a show, so I just have to compliment Disney, first of all, just for doing that in general. They did the same thing with, pretty much all of the major shows they've released on that platform, I think, on Disney Plus. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that for a second. But anyway, I saw She-Hulk. I saw the first episode, and it's interesting because this show in particular had gotten a lot of, I would call it preceding backlash. A lot of people had watched the advertisement for it, which had not very good effects, and I had a feeling they were probably going to improve those effects a little bit as time went on. But anyway, it just the amount of vitriol I saw directed at She-Hulk was just astounding before I even went in. So I was like, what is the deal with this show? All of that bad press made me want to watch it. So I watched the first episode. What did I think? Mostly I didn't like it. This show does have some problems that are pretty typical of what I would call modern writing that's centered around a female character. Now, I don't know whether you'd consider me the target demographic. I don't accept the whole "it's not for you" argument. I really don't accept that argument most of the time unless you have something very specific. The reason is just it's a show marketed toward a general audience, I think, or at least it should be intended for a general audience. If only a certain group of people is going to like it, then I don't consider that a good show. I think it needs to be a show that generally people like, and I think especially if you're trying to make more shows that are centered around female characters, you can't just have it be a thing where you're saying, and I don't believe this for a minute, but you're saying, well, this is not for you, it's only for women, really. I wouldn't accept it, and I don't even know why I'm really bringing that up, because I don't even think that's the case for this show anyway, but I'm saying, not necessarily from the company, but I hear that argument a lot from people. They say, it's not intended for you. I just don't agree with that. So anyway, so the main problem I have with the show is that the main character is just unlikable. And she's unlikable in a very specific way that seems to be pretty common with a lot of modern writing. And here's what I mean by that. One of the things that makes a character very relatable is when you see them overcome something, and this show does have that to some extent with it. And I apologize, I'm going to just call her She-Hulk. I don't remember her name. I know that her cousin is Bruce Banner, because that's Bruce Banner from the Hulk. Bruce Banner's been kind of a staple in the Hulk. I mean, Bruce Banner's been the Hulk since the beginning, so I know his name. I've seen some of his things. I've only ever seen her for 20 minutes and something, so I don't know her name yet. But anyway, the main character, part of what makes a character appealing is seeing them learn how to cope with something. You have it's kind of the classic hero's journey type thing, except for not really, because this isn't really someone goes and they find a mentor, but someone has an ordinary life, they have some good qualities that make them likable, something extraordinary happens to that person, at first that thing kicks their ass, and then they overcome it, and slowly they start to manage it, and they become an even better person than they were before the thing happened to them. That's kind of what's appealing about stories. And, for a long time, the superhero genre, especially, has been very male-dominated, and I get that. I get it. It's true. Action movies, superhero movies, spy movies, anything that you would consider, very action-y has been very male-dominated. And so you want to have female characters that can be just as badass. But I think people are forgetting that part of having a badass female character is having her actually earn that badassness. Like, if you just have a female character who's just badass for the sake of being badass, that's just like, that's boring, right? And it's fine to do that, by the way, with side characters. I've like, one of my favorite shows is Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I'm sorry because I always bring up that show when I talk about good writing. But that show has a lot of female characters that are just bad. Like, you find them in the story, they're just badass. There's no explanation for them being badass. They just are, right? And, like, that's fine because they're side characters, right? They're there to serve a story. Same thing happens with a lot of male characters. You just meet them and they're just badass, right? But, like, at some point, and by the way, starting a show with a badass character is not always a bad thing. I'm not saying you can't do that. But if you do that, you need to do it in such a way that shows why they're badass, right? You need to, like, yeah, I guess I'll talk about this a little. It's not really a spoiler. But for, like, The Mandalorian is a good example of this, right? The Mandalorian is a badass character. But throughout the course of the show, you know, you start off by showing why the character's badass. Then you start getting to the point where you're revealing more and more. But even in that first episode, you know, you get some backstory against, oh, okay, this is how this character learned this, right? So you don't have to necessarily show all of it, but you have to have it make sense. And here's why this is a problem for She-Hulk. Because, you know, they do a little bit of explanation of, you know, how she can control her emotions and stuff, because she's in a very very emotionally taxing field. She's a lawyer, right? And she has to do, so, like, okay, I get that. That makes sense, right? But then you get into stuff like her being able to control her Hulk powers and do things that Bruce cannot do, even though he's been at this for like, I think almost 2 decades at this point in there. So it's like she can, you know, she's been in possession of this power for all of 2 days. And it's like she can throw, you know, boulders further and stuff like that, I think. And actually, I don't remember if she eventually threw the boulder way further than him or not. I don't remember. But it's just, it very much comes off as like, haha, like I can do this just as good as you type deal. Which is like, I get it, it's kind of comedic, but it's just like you see this a lot of times with female characters where it's like we have to take an established male character and make them look silly to show that the female character is badass. Like, that's just, it always irritates me when they do that. They did that in The Force Awakens as well. They did that with Rey in The Force Awakens. Like, it's just, it's really quite annoying to me. And, like, just kind of giving the male character, like, the clown shoes, you know? Like, and, like, she's like arrogant, and, like, and I get why they're doing it, because it's just like, yeah, well, no one can tell me what to do type thing, which, you know, to be fair, at the end of the episode, she does get, like, a little bit of, she does realize she's wrong, but it's not done in such a way where it's like, oh, I was wrong about my premise. It's, I don't want to be a superhero. I just want to be a lawyer. And if things remain the way they are, then I won't need to do this, right? But this kind of weird, extraordinary circumstance happened at the end. So it's like, okay, well, now I'm deciding I need to do this. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just the whole, it's the whole, I don't need anybody for anything type thing. That's just like, that's not a compelling characteristic in anybody. You know, everybody needs to realize that they need other people, like, and know, just because there is a man who has more experience telling you something, that does not mean that it's just, like, automatically a sexist framing. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes the reason people are telling you something is because they have more history and experience with it, right? It would be the same thing if it was a male character and there was a female character who has a lot more experience. Like that's a thing that happens sometimes in shows too. You know, I think this story would have been much more compelling if she had her Hulk powers, if she maybe even if she showed like a little bit of an edge where it's just like, man, you're showing more progress than most people do. Well, I guess most people wouldn't really be a thing because there's only 2 people who have Hulk powers. But it's just like, man, I wasn't able to control it this much at this point. If Bruce would have said something like that, like, man, you're showing a little bit more ability to control this. And then at first, you know, she tries to control it and she fails, right? And like it's just taking a hold. But then she's slowly starting to remember her stuff that she had to deal with as a lawyer, and she's, you know, plugging all that knowledge into the lessons that Bruce is teaching her, and she's getting more and more of an edge, building up that strength, taking some L's, maybe gets hurt really bad by an enemy at first, but then slowly gets that strength back up, and eventually gets to the point where she's just as competent as Bruce, if not more. You know, that would be a lot more appealing. And I'm sorry, guys, like, I'm looking at these 2 characters. Bruce is so much bigger than her, and like just seeing them be like almost just equally matched, like, I realize she's a superhero, but also the whole thing about the Hulk transformation is like, it is sort of based in the physical reality, right? It is because he is, you know, when he's stronger, he gets bigger. So it's implied that like his size, like him growing in his size and him bulking up is why he's stronger, right? So when you're looking at She-Hulk and she's like not nearly as big as him and still like holding her own against him when she's just gotten these powers, it's like, come on, guy, really? Like, that probably wouldn't be a thing. And I found like that control that she has, I know what I was gonna say. Another thing I found kind of annoying about that is that like her being able to control her powers in that way, her anger, implies that like Bruce Banner had no circumstance where he had to learn to control his anger, right? It's just like, well, of course Bruce Banner couldn't control his anger. It took him all this time. Me, on the other hand, you know, I'm a lawyer, and it's just like, okay, cool, yeah, you're a lawyer, and they said that thing about, like, well, you know, anger and fear, that's, like, the entire experience of being a woman. Sure, okay, I mean, I'm sure lots of women would disagree with that's the entire existence of being a woman, but I'm sure, like, okay, fine, I get what they're saying, right? But it's just like, but does that really give you exponentially more control than Bruce Banner? Does it really give you that much more control to be a woman and a lawyer? I just don't buy that, man. And it's just like, I don't know who these people are who are doing this writing in a lot of these things, but it's just like, and I have so many good examples, and I'm gonna talk about Avatar again because I always talk about Avatar, you know what? But like, yeah, in Avatar, and I'm just making these noises because I know I'm probably being really annoying by always talking about this show, but it's such a good model because like, I don't know if you watched, especially The Legend of Korra. Korra takes a lot of L's. You know, like, all the characters take a lot of L's. And they build up that strength because they learn how to train. Like, they get that training. And sometimes they're in circumstances where people are just telling them, no, 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 no. No, I won't help you. No, I won't teach you. No, I won't train you. All this other stuff. And these female characters have to convince people that they're worthy, and they have to show them that they have what it takes, you know? And they have bad days. They lose a lot of things. They lose family members sometimes, you know? They go through a lot of loss to get to where they are. This is a thing with kind of all characters in that show, but it's just like, I know, like, when you have a character that does that, no one ever doubts, well, maybe some idiots, but most people don't doubt that the character's badass in that scenario. But these writers are like, no, we don't have to show you that. We just, you know, I'm a badass. You have to like me. I'm a badass. I'm likable. I can do all these things because I can. Like, you know, like, imagine watching Star Wars and then Luke Skywalker was already like good at everything at the beginning. Like, you know, and to be fair, like Luke Skywalker did have some talent at the beginning, but it was a small amount of talent. That's the first thing. And the thing he was good at, we saw in action why he was good at it, right? We kind of got a glimpse of that, and we heard about all the ways that he trained up, and it's just, you know, you don't want to start off with someone just being good. Another good show example of this is She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. How am I going to talk about this without spoiling it? Basically, there are female characters in that show. Actually, that show is mostly female characters. I think it's a show mostly marketed towards like girls, but there are quite a few female characters in that show who start out even in the wrong, like start out kind of on the wrong side of things, or they start out with not that much power, or they start out with being extremely clumsy, and they over time get better and get like, so their powers are absolutely nasty, you know. That's like, you know, that's, and also the Dragon Prince, that's another show. Now that show does have a very badass female character who's badass from the beginning, but like we kind of, even in that case, we see that character like struggling, and we see that character, you know, we get context for why that character is the way they are. Like I said, like this show tries to do that with, you know, like I said, with showing her as a lawyer and stuff. Like it tries to provide that context, but it just ultimately comes off like it's just checking a box as an excuse. It just feels like bad writing, honestly. And the amount of things they allude to do not justify the character that we got. So, you know, when I started watching this, I liked it because I thought, oh, okay, I like this. It's kind of breaking the fourth wall a little bit. You know, I like that, you know, She-Hulk is like addressing the camera, and that's kind of fun. And it's kind of cool that we get to see Bruce Banner, and I liked it for about 2 seconds, and then like it just, I don't know. And by the way, that whole thing with the car crash, that was just, this has nothing to do with like the character writing. I just think that was a bad scene. Like I was just watching that like, what is this? like oh, car crash. Like, first of all, how is she alive? That's the first thing. Second of all, the pacing on that was so weird. Like that was just weird pacing. And like, you know, I get like, and I know there are probably going to be some scenes that some people complain about that I don't necessarily complain about, like her talking about, you know, people mansplaining things to her in her career as a lawyer. Like that's not a thing that I think is like I don't think that's like exaggerated. Like that doesn't feel like, oh man, I just have to put this line in here because of feminism or whatever. No, that doesn't feel exaggerated. That's totally believable. That a female lawyer would constantly be treated as incompetent because she's a female lawyer. Same thing with the guys kind of catcalling her outside the bar at like 3 a.m. when she's alone and there's nobody else around her. Like, yeah, that seems like it would be something. And it's like, I think it just made her mad was the thing. It wasn't even really like they were like over the top criminals or something like that. They just were catcalling her and, you know, trying to get her to come back. And like that doesn't seem like a thing that would be unrealistic. So those are a couple of things that I anticipate people complaining about that I would not complain about. Because like when I watched that scene, like I was kind of expecting it, first of all, and I was like, oh, I wonder how they're going to do this scene. Is it going to be like super like over the top? And it's just like, no, she got catcalled, she turned into Hulk, and then, you know, she kind of blacked out. But then again, like we find out later that she was in total control. So, well, actually, no. Actually, she wasn't. I take that back, because she was in control later, but she said at the beginning she lost control sometimes and she wouldn't remember what happened. So I think she didn't have control in that scenario. So anyway, I think that scene was fine. But just this whole, pretty much everything that came afterward is just like, ugh. I don't know. I didn't like it. I don't know if I'm going to watch next week. I might watch next week just so I can like talk about it with people, because I'm sure everyone will be talking about it. This is another thing. This is another thing with weekly syndication, right? You have a week to breathe after you watch the episode, and people are talking about the latest episode every week. If you just dump the whole damn season at once, then like how are you supposed to talk to other people about it? How far are you? Did the guy die yet? Oh shit, sorry. You know what I mean? Like I hate when they do that. Just Netflix, just release weekly episodes. Just stop being so weird. Stop trying to be stop trying to be different from everything. Just release weekly episodes, man. It would be so much better. Stranger Things could have been so much more popular if we just did weekly episodes. We talk about it every week, whatever. Okay, so She-Hulk, that's the end of me talking about She-Hulk. Maybe I'll talk about the next episode next week. I'm sorry that this was a very rambly review where I didn't really focus that much on anything in particular. But thanks for listening, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.